Just a second. It was the only ship to fire to hit its targets on D-Day. I don't know if that's totally correct. I think other ships did hit their targets. There were like a bajillion ships involved in the D-Day landing, like a silly amount of ships. If we're back, I think. Um, but yes, it the captain did order one side of the ship to be flooded, so that it would have a higher possible elevation that would potentially launch the shells farther than it normally would have been able to. I don't know how well that actually works. The gun should be able to elevate up to 45 degrees, which is again like the maximum. But it is a big brain play. Big brain play. That is absolutely correct, Nazu. Okay, let's get back to reading, I think. So I'm not gonna read this because it's a lot going on here. But basically, at different elevations in the air, as in literal elevation, not gun elevation, wind acts differently. Oh, I forgot to put back on my music. Oopsie, oopsie, oopsie. Uh-oh, uh-oh. The captain is like, we're hitting on target. Yes, 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 yes. I think there's other instances of ships doing similar things. But Texas also has old, not 16-inch guns. It's got 14-inch guns, and an old model of them at that, I believe. I don't think they ever replaced them with a newer version, as they did on like the standards. But yeah, this is what that's saying. It's saying at different elevations the wind is different, so you got to account for that. Are you sure? He said to flood it. The ship can take it. Ships, they're meant to take flooding in limited amounts on one side. What this means, I don't know if there's an exact number ascribed to this story, but it's probably not more than a 5-degree list, which is safe. And then they immediately pumped it out after they were done firing. But like a 5 to 10-degree list is safe. Albeit uncomfortable if you're on the ship, but let's skip this. Okay, here we go. This is a section that helps a bit. Or that's less confusing. If a battery of guns is fired at the same instant with the same elevation and traverse settings, the projectiles will not all fall at the same point. The variation in the fall of projectiles fired simultaneously from a battery of guns is called projectile dispersion. A certain amount of dispersion is expected from guns no matter how carefully they are aimed. For instance, for a certain battery of guns firing at a range of 10,000 yards, it is considered fairly good if the projectile range dispersion is only 50 yards. This dispersion is illustrated below. Total dispersion is 50 yards from free shots fired. Dispersion is the result of variations in certain factors of interior as well as exterior ballistics. Variations in powder temperature, structure of the projectile, density, and manner of loading, and extent of erosion produce different muzzle velocities among the several guns, thus affecting their ranges. Equally important, unpredictable variations in air currents affect the projectile's trajectories and hence the ranges. Deflection dispersion, in which the projectiles fall to one side or the other of the target, also occur in battery fire and is due to the same causes as range dispersion. Other factors affecting the flight of the projectile. Thus far in your study of the problem of hitting a fixed target from a fixed position, you have learned of the effects of the flight of the projectile of gravity, air resistance, initial velocity, drift, and wind. These are the most important factors which affect the projectile's trajectory, and they require the largest corrections to gun elevation and traverse settings. There are several other factors, however, which affect the projectile's flight and should be mentioned. We have thus far assumed that the sight telescope, gun, and target are all in the same horizontal plane, and that the line of sight from gun to target is in that plane. Actually, these conditions do not usually hold. First of all, the line of sight from director to the target is not parallel to the gun. Line of sight, gun line of sight. This necessitates a correction for vertical parallax to allow for the vertical distance between gun and director aboard the ship. In addition, while the gun is located some distance above the waterline, fire is directed at the target's waterline for surface targets, and thus the gun line of sight is depressed slightly below the horizontal. This position angle correction is very minor, however, and is normally neglected for fire against surface targets. The line of sight to the point of aim is different between high up directors and the guns, because the director is higher than the gun, so it's important to consider. Now, most of this stuff is done by machines. This is just so you understand what's going on. The computer in this period does it for the most part, though you might have to put in input still. But all this stuff is getting measured, so it's not the... Ooh, good toe crack. Hopefully that picked up. Not the most important. I'm going to turn down the music a little more. You heard it? Perfect. Just as vertical parallax requires a correction to gun elevation to compensate for the vertical distance between gun and director aboard ship, the horizontal distance between gun and director requires a correction to gun deflection to compensate for horizontal parallax. If the gun's line of fire were parallel to the director's line of sight, the fired projectile would miss the target by the horizontal distance between gun and director, because that's going on too. Director is not directly above the gun, so it has to be accounted for as well. I'm not going to read this. Here we go. Now this is the fun part, the Earth's curvature. Remember guys, Earth is round, okay? If you disagree, I'm sorry. But for the point of this manual, the Earth is round at the very least. Because the Earth's surface is curved, the target is not in the horizontal plane, which is tangent to the Earth at the gun. The greater the range, the farther the target falls below the horizontal, and the line of sight is depressed below the horizontal. If the elevation angle were set to hit a target at the measured range in the horizontal plane, the projectile would fall beyond the target. Hence, the elevation angle must be slightly reduced to correct for, depending on range, to correct for the curvature of the Earth. It's not as literal as it is in this picture, but there is curvature going on. And it's more of a thing at long range than the short range. Especially if you're firing over the horizon, it's immediately relevant. But tabulated information is available in the correction to elevation angle required for various values of range. Correction is small for short-range fire, but becomes appreciable as range increases. When fire is directed at short installations, the target may be above the gun, in which case the line of sight will make an angle called target elevation angle at the horizontal. The vertical angle between line of sight and line of fire to compensate for curvature of trajectory due to the effect of gravity is known as super elevation angle. Other factors affecting the flight of the projectile. Suppose that you had a gun at the North Pole which could fire a projectile far enough to reach a target fixed at the equator. Because the Earth spins on an axis through the North Pole, this is another thing you have to count for. The Earth's rotation. I think they kind of talk about this stuff in the Evangelion episode where they fight Rami out. The cube. Because the Earth spins on an axis through the North Pole, the gun would be stationary, but the target would be moving at a velocity of about 1,000 miles per hour, since the fixed point on the equator has that velocity due to the Earth's rotation. If you aim the gun at the target and fire, the target would move several miles during the time the projectile is in flight, and the projectile would land where the target had been at the instant of firing. In order to score a hit, this is more just about leading a target and actually the rotation being important. But in order to score a hit, it is necessary to lead the target, that is, train the point to which the target will have moved during the projectile's flight. Projectile and target will arrive at this point at the same time. This condition holds true whenever a projectile's trajectory has a north to south component. That is, also the rotation is important there, yeah. That is, whenever the gun is at a different latitude than the target, the effect increases as north to south distance between a gun and target increases. However, a correction is made for the error introduced by the Earth's rotation only on guns larger than 5 inch, since the error is negligible in smaller guns. You have learned how air resistance affects a projectile's trajectory. You found that the air is displaced by the projectile during flight exerts a force on the projectile which opposes its motion, and that this force depends on the projectile size and speed. Another factor which influences the effects of air resistance, and also which is a factor in the computation of weighted ballistic wind, previously discussed, is the density of the air. The density of a substance is a measure of how many molecules of the substance occupy a certain volume. A dense material has many molecules in a fixed volume, while a less dense substance has fewer molecules in the same volume. The density of air varies with altitude. At high altitudes, the air pressure is less on the surface, and the air is less dense, since there is less force pushing the molecules together. When the air is less dense, there are fewer molecules of air to be displaced by the moving projectile. Hence, they exert less force to oppose its motion than does dense air. Ooh. As the projectile gains altitude during the first half of its flight, air resistance decreases due to the thin air at high altitudes. As it descends to hit the target, the air resistance again increases due to the dense air near the Earth's surface. A correction to the gun elevation angle is made to compensate for variations in air density. So there's how that works. Look at that, wow. Of the various factors, this is a review, previously discussed which affect the flight of the projectile from fixed gun to a fixed target, some can be classified as range ballistics and others deflection ballistics. Range ballistics are those factors which affect how far a projectile will travel from gun to point of impact. Corrections to compensate for the effects of errors introduced by the factors of range ballistics are made by adjusting the elevation angle. Deflection ballistics are those factors which affect how far a projectile will travel along a line perpendicular to the line of fire. Yeah, that's a paragraph with a lot of abbreviations, so I'm going to read less of that. Before learning about the complications for the fire control problem introduced when both target and ship are moving, let's review the factors of range and deflection ballistics when both gun and target are fixed. So that's the review. The various range ballistic factors and the quantities which determine these factors listed in the table below. Each of the range ballistics factors require correction to gun elevation angle. So there's all those. The range ballistic factors are shown in the illustration below, like where they happen. Ain't that something? Some more stuff. Illustration. Hydrate. Okay, Lucio. All done. Well, not done the cup. I took a big sip. So I'm going to be burping for several minutes. In this section, you have learned about the many factors which affect the flight of the projectile from the fixed gun to a fixed target. Now, corrections called control ballistics are made by the gun settings in elevation and traverse to compensate for the errors introduced by these factors. Now you're ready to go on and apply the things you have learned to the study of the problem of hitting a moving target from a moving ship. All of the principles of interior and exterior ballistics which apply to a stationary targeting gun also hold true when both own ship and target are moving. Hitting a moving target. Okay, I think we're gonna save this one for another stream if that's okay. I think we might be at the end here, as it turns out, maybe. Or I can skip this chapter. Because this is hell math. This is like the actual math heavy stuff. About bearings. I think I'll do this next time if that's okay. What do you guys think? Is that okay? Put this in this channel. So we might do something else for a minute or free. Ooh. Actually, I am going to see who's live. It's just in advance. Quite a few fellows are live. Just looking to see who I may potentially raid. You're heading off anyway now, man? Not gonna lie, boat fights sound rad now. If you're a math guy, I guess. But there's a lot of play. It's a really cool thing to do. It's a really cool job being the fire control specialist. It's still a job, but it's a lot more automated now, obviously. So we live in a digital age and an analog age at the same time. But I hope, I hope everybody enjoyed. I will be coming back sometime next week or no, the week after next to, ooh, head scratch is good. Yeah. Sometime the week after next to inform you all more fun facts. And let me see my schedule. Because next week, I'm going to tell you guys my schedule now. Next week on Monday, I'm streaming Portal 2 Co-op with Bone Miser. On Tuesday, I'm streaming some Scream Fortress 2 with Strategos Lucianus. On Thursday, I'm playing Halo 3 ODST with 40 Callie, aka Blue Cat. And on Friday, I'm doing a third part to my Spring Sharp lesson series where we're going to design a challenge boat. I've played part of ODST on the 360 back in the day, and it's hard. But also, I was a baby gamer, and I was using a controller, so don't save. That might have something to do with it, I think. I've only actually completed Reach of all the Halo games. But I think I'll play some more sometime. I think that they're pretty good stream games for sure. But I try not to do backlog gaming. That's a thing I try to avoid, I think. I just play games I feel like playing. I don't think I've backlogged anything yet. But yeah. I still need to buy ODST. I only have Reach on here. But ODST is $5, so not a huge deal. But we are going to start our raid. What tells you what song I'm playing? I didn't know that. That's cool. It means I must have it set it up right. Okay, we're gonna pause the music and we're gonna decide who to raid. Let me click this, and then just so I can turn on audio, click this, and I'll click this. Then I'll click this, and I hope I don't put myself in a loop. Okay. So I've got 2 people I'm thinking of raiding, potentially. Yeah. I think I'm going to raid where did she go? Did she enter stream? No. I want to raid Hexus. Enceladus Hexus. So I hope that all of you have a wonderful night. I hope you enjoyed my reading stream. It got a lot of viewers, like very consistent compared to my gaming streams, which is kind of odd. Welcome. I'll follow you after the stream is done. I'll make sure to follow you. I have you pulled up on Twitter, so I'll be sure to follow you after. I hope you all have a wonderful night, a wonderful morning, a wonderful day, wherever you are in the world. I know in like Nezu's case, it's the morning, I think, because you live over in Anglo land. But yeah, have a fantastic night. Let's start the raid. Did I write that right? I did. Okay, everybody. Our raid message is gonna be this is gonna be a raid message. If you have if you're subbed, you can include the emotes. If you're not subbed, you don't got to, obviously. I don't know if you'd be able to, but this will be our raid message. So have a fantastic night.